What is up, YouTube? My name is Eben, and today on The Edge we are going to be talking about Hex Maniac. This supporter card says until the end of your opponent's next turn, each Pokemon in play in each player's hand and in each player's discard pile has no abilities. So basically, you play this and you turn off all abilities, pretty much everywhere, which is a pretty awesome effect. But it's kind of easy to overlook when you're used to thinking about supporters as being things that draw you cards or have much more obviously powerful effects like Lysander, getting a Pokemon from your opponent's bench and just calling it up to the active position. It can be easy to forget just how powerful an ability like this is. So let's kind of just think about it and look at it, because this card could easily be a one-of that makes the difference between making top 16 or top 32 and making day 2, or not quite making it. This is a very important card. You may have seen one-ofs on a number of deck lists already, and well, maybe some, maybe not some. But this is a card that I think is going to become even more important, especially since expanded format's going to be the thing for states events this year. So we have to consider modified and expanded. Well, one card that's going to definitely have some shaping power is Aegis/EX. Its Mighty Shield ability makes it impervious to damage from any Pokemon with special energies on it. And for some decks, not running special energies is just kind of not possible. I mean, think about decks like Vespiquen or Seismitoad. Those decks pretty much have to have special energies in order to survive, or else they're just not efficient enough to make the cut. And as a result, though, they are very much prey to Aegis/. But with Hex Maniac, you get a one-turn opportunity to punch through that shield and really do damage where it counts. And one turn might not seem like a lot, but consider that Vespiquen with, say, the new Flareon behind it and its flare effect, you could easily one-shot this Aegis/, no problem, and all you would need is one turn. And the ability to suddenly and unexpectedly take an Aegis/ that's fully powered out could set an opponent back several turns and really put them on the ropes, as they may not have another Aegis/ ready to go, or at least not one that has energy on it, and this could put their other Pokemon in jeopardy. At the very least, it's going to score you 2 prizes that your opponent probably didn't expect. The same goes for Pokemon like Sigilyph, or of course Suicune, talking about expanded format, where its Safeguard ability protects it from all EX attacks, but many EXs could easily one-hit KO them otherwise. A one-turn opening is really all you need. Of course, there are many other forms of disruption too. Cards like Shaman EX, or say Farewell Letter Unknown. Both of these Pokemon as well have abilities that they really want to be able to set off. Turning them off, even for one turn in the early game, can be pretty crippling to an opponent. It can essentially be like completely removing one of their turns in a lot of cases. Even playing Hex Maniac on turn 1, remember, you can play your Shaman EX and your Pokemon abilities and then play your Hex Maniac, so you can get the advantages and kind of let you skip out on your opponent getting theirs in a way. You playing this on, say, your first turn, to many opponents could be a very damaging thing indeed. While this feels like something that might be a crucial late game pick, it can also be very powerful in the early game, so it's not one of those cards you're sad to see in your opening hand necessarily. But any turn you play this can, incidentally, though you might not know it because these cards would be in their hand, this card can still be pretty damaging to a lot of opponents. Of course, there are other setup mons that you can suffer much more obviously. Bronzong, a turn without Metal Links, can put a Metal opponent behind quite a bit as they scramble to try to power things up, as missing one turn of Metal Links could easily mean like 1 or 2 energies down on some very high attack cost Pokemon, meaning they might just not be attacking you that turn as a result. And Pokemon like Execute won't be coming back from the discard pile in order to power up abilities, or, well, do any one of a number of things. They'll be stuck there, and a lot of decks rely on that kind of reinforcement in order to succeed. Can also provide an easy opening against Vileplume, whose ability to shut off items, period, otherwise can be very devastating, as so many decks rely on their items so heavily. But Hex Maniac can turn Vileplume off for a turn and give you the ability to play lots of items and get everything you need, and by the time Vileplume turns back on, well, you've already done a lot of your recovery from its ability in the first place, so it's not nearly so bad for you. And many of the decks revolving around Vileplume only use a handful of items, so they won't get as much benefit out of the Hex Maniac as you did. Speaking of that Flareon, how about Flareon and Jolteon? A number of decks are really trying to capitalize on these cards right now and their ability to change Pokemon types to take advantage of type weakness. Hex Maniac turning that off can easily deny them a KO, once again, especially in those first few turns of the game, which are pretty crucial right now. It can also offer a turn of relief against a card like Ariados, whose Poisonous Nest will no longer be able to threaten your active Pokemon. And think about Pokemon like Machamp EX that really want to be poisoned by Ariados. Since it gets recovered by its attack, it won't be poisoned on your turn when you play the Hex Maniac. And therefore, on your opponent's next turn, they won't be able to Poisonous Nest the Machamp EX, meaning it won't be doing much damage to you. Easily turning what could otherwise be an easy one-hit KO for the Machamp EX into a 2-hit KO, burning up a turn of theirs, which is always a pretty powerful effect. Can also, thinking about expanded now, Keldeo EX can't rush in, which means you could make status matter against opponents who count on Keldeo to help relieve status, and also keep them from switching in and around as easily for other reasons. Darkrai EX can also be turned off, preventing free retreats in decks that might otherwise really count on them in order to maintain board presence and control. How about Crobat and Golbat? Shutting off abilities for a turn means that bat decks won't be able to harass you with their abilities spreading damage around and could easily prevent KOs for them as well. Of course, there's just one thing after another that Hex Maniac actually makes useful. I mean, consider Ninetales. Getting locked by a Ninetales and losing your stadium could be pretty unpleasant for a lot of decks. But, whether you're running Ninetales or your opponent's running Ninetales, but especially if your opponent has it, Hex Maniac can turn off that ability for one turn, let you slide in a stadium, and then when the Ninetales ability turns back on, essentially secure it. Assuming they don't have a stadium of their own to replace it, which if they're playing Ninetales, they might not. And there's some even less obvious things you can do, like, say, think about Hawlucha for a second. Hawlucha can't take big KOs sometimes because of his ability. Think about Tyranitar EX or Mega Tyranitar. These Pokemon would otherwise be easy knockout fodder for Hawlucha, but its ability turns off weakness when it attacks, meaning it's going to have to 2-hit KO them at best. But one turn of Hex Maniac allows Hawlucha to punch through and easily one-shot these things with the right amount of boosting and support, or at the very least, do very heavy damage. And, of course, a lot of this, kind of the problem, I guess you might say, is that Hex Maniac here is sort of a card you don't want to run like 3 or 4 of, because it's kind of situational. It's the thing you want to have at the right moment. So, you're not going to run a bunch, you're probably only going to run 1. So how are you going to get it at the right time? Oh, that's right, we have Versus Seeker, a card that combos well with, well, pretty much every supporter, and especially very situational ones like this, but one which is just so gosh darn important for Hex Maniac that it really does need to be mentioned. Just because of the ability to get the Hex Maniac early, play it early to shut down your opponent's early power-ups with things like this, and then bring it back just as many times as you need to turn off their abilities. The ability to bring it back many times if needed or never at all is very relevant just because of the ability to impair decks that sometimes really count on their abilities in order to survive. So anyway, that is it for today, and until next time, like, comment, subscribe, check me out on Twitter if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.